The Secrets of the Assassins, the world's deadliest secret group. This group lives without law. They live in the mountains and are almost impregnable because they take refuge in their strong castles during wars. They have a leader among them whose fear has penetrated the hearts of all rulers, both near and far, as well as neighboring Christian princes, because he is in the habit of killing them in mysterious and astonishing ways. All this you have heard was one of the most famous descriptions of the assassins, which is included in a part of the report of the ambassador of the Roman Emperor, Frederick Barbarossa, in Egypt. But who were the assassins really, which is still debated and discussed to this day? Assassination and murder are as old as humanity. The secret group of assassins, although not the first to commit assassination, were known as one of the first organized groups for assassination. The assassins, also known as the Ismailis, were a group of Nizari Ismailis, a branch of the Ismaili sect of Islam. These people had a deviant and extremist belief. They began their activities in the Middle East around 1090 AD and were able to capture a large number of castles before the start of the First Crusade in 1256 AD. The location of the captured castles started from Alamut and went as far as modern-day Syria and the Levant. In the correspondence of Frederick Barbarossa with his rulers in the Middle East, the location of the assassins is mentioned as the areas around Aleppo, Damascus, and Antioch in modern-day Turkey. According to this correspondence, the assassins were surrounded by the enemy on all sides in most of their positions. After the Crusades began, which were launched to reclaim the Holy Land from the Christians, the Seljuks also began their advance to capture more areas. The assassins, who did not belong to either side, felt threatened and decided to confront both sides. The group was founded by a famous figure named Hassan Sabah. Using his fame and after attracting enough followers, he began training his secret group. Hassan Sabah was well known as a thinker, writer, and also a warrior. He was nicknamed the Old Man of the Mountains, a title that was applied to all assassin leaders after Sabah. He was able to free the Ismailis from the control of the Fatimid caliphs in Egypt and, under his leadership, concentrated the Ismailis in Syria and Iran so that they could freely pursue their activities. As we have said, the centers of power of the Ismailis were a large number of castles under their control, the largest of which was the Alamut castle. The mountainous location of this castle was by no means accidental, and, due to its strategic location, they had a great advantage over their enemies. For more than 100 years, they were able to resist the attacks of the Seljuks and Crusaders, but were ultimately defeated by the Mongol army. Many of his followers were from the mountains and villages around the castle, and most of them were young. In the cities, they also invited artisans, merchants, and workers to their sect, but they were not very successful in attracting the upper classes of society. The origin of the name assassin. In Old Persian, Hashishin means druggists, and since medicinal plants were abundant in the Alamut region, they were exporters of medicine and were called Hashishin. Assassin, in English, is the name that the Crusaders and medieval Europeans used for the mystics during the Alamut period, whose area of rule included Iran and Syria centered on the Alamut fortress. The name Hashishin was transferred from Syria to Europe by the Crusaders and has been used in various forms of Western literature of the Crusades, in Hebrew and Greek texts. Assassins were actually people who believed in and adhered to religion, and they mistakenly attributed it to a derivative of the word hashish. The Shadow Army. There has always been an aura of mystery surrounding the assassins as a feared group. People believed that they were very extremist and loyal, and that they recruited through trickery and drugs. Travelers like Marco Polo have mentioned the fearsomeness and strange customs of this group. Of course, it should be said that Marco Polo was born in 1254 AD and most of Marco Polo's material is about Hassan Sabah, but at the time of Marco Polo's birth, more than 100 years had passed since Sabah's death. This Phoenician travel writer tells the story of a place that was built by Sabah and was so attractive that the young people under the influence of drugs did not want to leave it. The young people obeyed all of Sabah's commands, even to the point of sacrificing their lives, in order to return to such a place again. What is important is how people view this group. A completely secretive and mysterious group with its own rituals and customs. The members of this group were known for their unconditional obedience to Hassan Sabah's orders. The reputation of this level of loyalty was complex throughout the Middle East and even beyond, and this unconditional loyalty had become one of the concerns of the rulers of the entire region. Of course, the main fame of the assassins was due to the widespread killings of this group, which struck great fear in the hearts of Muslims and Christians. Because of the way they killed, many groups hated them. This hatred was more for the way this group behaved, which, as it were, did not believe in any law. People at that time lived in a world where military prowess and chivalry were important components of war and diplomacy, but in empires, they looked at the assassins with contempt, because instead of honorable killing, they killed their targets through deceit and secretly. The German priest, named Brocardus, describes the assassins as a dangerous group and says, "They are thirsty for human blood. They kill anyone for a fee and do not value anything, including life and salvation." Mysterious sect. The main reason for the assassins' assassinations and murders is still a matter of debate and controversy. Of course, the belief in the necessity of assassinating and killing oppressive rulers, according to their beliefs, was a seemingly very justified motivation for them. Killing rulers for the people and the country was a thing that had a long history before the assassins, such as the assassination of Julius Caesar to save Rome. The Ismailis' victims were mainly princes, officials, ministers, religious figures, and crusaders. The assassins had become very famous because of the way they killed their targets. Apparently, they only used daggers to kill and did not use the usual tools of those years, such as swords and poison. Their assassination method allowed them to maintain their territories for hundreds of years without having a large army. The assassins easily and without any doubt killed their targets in the presence of witnesses, which is why they were very different from other assassin mercenaries at that time. Saladin, who had made many attempts to unite the Muslims, slept in a wooden tower under heavy security after numerous attempts on his life. Conrad of Montferrat, king of Jerusalem, was the first Christian leader to be assassinated by the assassins in 1192. His assassination in the city of Tyre in Lebanon demonstrated the extent of the power of the feared group. It was the first time a king had been assassinated in broad daylight in that region, in the presence of his bodyguards. One of the assassins was captured and the other was killed. The assassin declared under torture that he had been sent by Richard the Lionheart to assassinate Conrad, which seemed logical given the differences between the two men. However, Hassan Sabah, in a letter to a European prince, exonerated Richard the Lionheart of the murder charge and took responsibility for the assassination. He went on to write that the only target in the assassination was the king and that his men were not allowed to harm innocent people. By eliminating prominent Muslim and Christian figures, the assassins were able to maintain their position without having a military advantage. This quote from an Ismaili poet shows how confident the assassins must have been. He writes, "O brothers, when the time of victory comes and fortune from both worlds rushes to our aid, then 1-foot warrior is enough to terrify a kingdom with 100,000 cavalry." Assassination methods. In order to achieve their goals and kill, the assassins were masters of disguise and easily disguised themselves as local people. Of course, the use of masks and hats, although attractive, is not very realistic, because people wearing such a cover, especially in broad daylight, attract a lot of attention. Instead, staging and using environmental elements, such as the one recorded in the assassination of 1106, played a vital role in the assassinations of this group. For example, 6 of them managed to reach the presence of a controversial religious figure in Cairo without anyone suspecting them, under the pretext of confiscating the horse and retinue of a German knight. Psychological operations as well as physical violence were among their tools. Ahmed Sanjar, the Seljuk king, was the one who launched many wars against the Ismaili fortresses and rejected their requests for peace. According to historical accounts, one morning when Ahmed Sanjar woke up, he found a note stabbed with a dagger next to his bed, in which a request for peace was mentioned. Then a message was sent to him from the assassins, which read, "If I had wanted, this dagger could have been placed in your heart instead of your throne." Sultan Sanjar, who was extremely horrified by this incident, issued a peace order, and for decades a lasting peace was established between the Ismailis and the Seljuks. The fear that existed in the holy lands of the Ismailis caused the facts about this group to be severely distorted. Also, due to the destruction of all written sources of the assassins after the capture of the Alamut fortress by the Mongols, Our sources about this group are only the writings of their enemies. Most likely, the assassins were only a political government in the Holy Lands and were not as dangerous and extremist as recorded in history. The destruction of the assassins. By 1227 AD, the assassins had become a major political power in the region. The assassins' decline began when they were forced to fight their enemies on two fronts. Their most important enemy was the Mongols. These horsemen stormed the Middle East from Central Asia in 1256 AD, destroying everything in their path. At this time, the assassins set aside their differences with other Muslim states to fight the Mongols by uniting together, an alliance that did not benefit them. The assassins may have played a role in fueling Mongol hatred of them by attempting to assassinate a Mongol commander named Mengukin. After this failed attempt, Hulagu Khan and his army were able to capture the Alamut fortress that same year. Their second main enemy was the Sultan of Egypt, known as Babur. He was trying to free the Levant from European and Mongol control. The Ismailis also lived as an independent state in these lands and were a great danger to him. The assassins, caught between their powerful enemies, lost their fortresses in Syria one by one. After these events, the assassins no longer existed as an independent state, but a few of them continued their scattered operations after their defeat. The most famous of these operations is the assassination of Edward I during the Crusades, which was of course unsuccessful. By the end of the 13th century, there was no trace of the assassins as a coherent group. After years of relentless efforts, the Ismailis were unable to maintain their rule, but they gave rise to legends that have continued for years. Who was on their assassination list? The long hands of the assassins reached everywhere. Kings and sultans, if they caused the discomfort of the mountain elder, had to take many measures to protect themselves. Here are some of their names. Khawaja Nizam al-Mulk. This powerful minister of the Seljuk government, according to the narrations obtained in Borjard near Navand, was wounded in the chest and vein by someone dressed in Sufi clothing and died a day later. Conrad of Montferrat. He was the most high-ranking person to be assassinated by the assassins. The assassins, who disguised themselves as Christian monks, managed to kill the king of Jerusalem. Saladin al-Ayyubi. As a Sunni commander, Saladin al-Ayyubi was an enemy of Richard the Lionheart and the assassins. The assassins, disguised as soldiers, attempted to assassinate Saladin twice. Once in Aleppo and the following year in the city of Azaz, but they were unsuccessful. Edward I. During Edward I's Crusades, the assassins had disappeared as a group but continued to operate individually. When the assailant entered Edward's bedroom, he killed him with his bare hands.